Hey, everybody, welcome back to The Flying In, a podcast brought to you by the New Dems. I'm your host, Marc Veasey. Greg is out today. He has had some trouble getting in from Cincinnati, Ohio. And so we have a special guest. That is Marilyn Strickland from the great state of Washington. Marilyn?
Well, thank you for having me here. I'm delighted to be here with our colleague, Angie Craig, today.
Absolutely. And our viewers will notice by now that we have a new studio set up. This is going to be the new setup. Is a little bit more intimate in here, and I think it's going to make for a better broadcast. And so, Greg and I are excited. I hope that our guest host and our special guests are just excited. And obviously, we're coming to you after a very incredibly difficult last couple of weeks here with everything that has been happening with ICE agents in Minneapolis, and we're grateful to be joined in just a moment here by Congresswoman Angie Craig, who is from Minnesota's 2nd Congressional District, who represents the Minneapolis area and has actually been on the ground there for the past week or so. So we're going to run through the situation in Minneapolis and the path forward in Congress to reform DHS and ICE. And so, Angie, thank you for joining us. We're so happy to have you here.
Yeah, it's great to be here with two great colleagues.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And one of the things that we like to ask our guests, because we like to have a little fun with this. We want people to be, as they say on social media, be their authentic selves.
Kind of get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Little bit.
So tell us something about yourself that no one can find on Google.
Oh, secrets.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, no one can find this on Google, but Mark, you and I talked a little bit of this, right? When we were riding one day together. Yeah. So I am a huge basketball fan.
Yes, I know that.
My grandmother actually was a big old fan, Arkansas Razorbacks.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. But what you need to know about me is I am the biggest Minnesota Lynx fan ever. And I actually, I'm a big Lynx fan, WNBA, unrivaled women's basketball. But I actually met my wife because she was a basketball coach, and I was bringing my kids to play on the team that her kids were playing on.
Wow.
So,
Nice.
There you go.
Nice.
So basketball weaves through my whole history.
Yeah. And I did know that. I love the story that you told about your grandmother calling Nolan Richardson, who was a former head basketball coach at Arkansas, the great Nolan Richardson. Angie's grandmother actually called Nolan Richardson at home.
Back in the yellow pages, man, he would just had his phone number, and then my grandmother would call him and tell him what he'd done wrong last Friday night, Saturday. It's good fun.
I love that story. We're going to talk about Minneapolis. I know that people want to hear about Minneapolis from you. On Saturday, January 24th, federal agents confronted, shot, and killed Alex Pretti, a 37-year-old ICU nurse. Videos quickly circulated showing what happened. Federal agents mobbed Pretti as he attempted to help a woman they had pushed over and literally unloaded 10 shots in 5 seconds and killed him. And despite the video evidence, Kristi, Noem, and Stephen Miller, and the Bovino guy that wore the long, Axis jacket, said that they called him a domestic terrorist and an assassin, and said that he wanted to massacre law enforcement. The administration obviously was lying, and they're playing games. They like to do this made-for-TV playing game stuff. Tell us how people in Minneapolis are feeling right now. If you could just take us to Minneapolis and put us on the streets that you walk and the people that you talk to, and let us know what are people thinking right now.
Yeah, this is really personal to all of us. I mean, these are our neighbors that they're coming after. And I mean, I'll take it real personal on that Saturday when Alex Pretti was gunned down by ICE. Our 28-year-old son had been out over the weekend doing constitutional observances. Yeah. And so my wife and I spent the first 20 minutes after that shooting trying to find our son because we weren't sure whether it was him or not.
Right.
And so I'm giving you that example to tell you that this is really personal to every single one of us, what ICE is doing in our community. We care about our neighbors. We're showing up to make sure that ICE is performing their role in the way that they should. And I don't even need to tell you because everyone can see the videos that they are not. Right. This is not law enforcement. This is vigilante behavior on the part of this agency. And it's been extraordinary when you talk to Minnesotans. Just not only are we showing up for each other, but even law enforcement at home in Minnesota is showing up for their neighbors as well, calling out the behavior on the part of ICE, which is truly extraordinary to see local law enforcement calling out federal law enforcement. So look, we're sad, we're angry, we are heartbroken, and we are resilient. I have never seen anything in my life like the resilience of the people that I represent. 50,000 Minnesotans showed up last Friday.
You saw the images on television.
It was unbelievable. I mean, every Friday we just keep coming out. And so I'm proud, I'm angry, I'm stunned that our Republican colleagues from Minnesota especially have still not yet started to speak out against the behavior that we are seeing on the streets of Minneapolis and on the streets in Minnesota.
It really does remind you of the civil rights movement when the governors were so powerful in places like Mississippi and Arkansas and other southern states, and people were so afraid of losing their primary that they just didn't want to say that, hey, this is wrong, or we shouldn't be doing this. Our country is better than this. People were so afraid of these very powerful figures that have become popular for opposing segregation. And so even people that knew it was wrong didn't want to say anything. And that reminds me of so many Republican leaders. And that's really sad. Marilyn?
Yeah, I want to just kind of build on what you're talking about, the civil rights movement, because, that movement was effective because television was relatively new at the time. So the world saw the injustice happening and people rose up. And I think about the 50,000 people you described, Angie, in the streets of Minneapolis, standing up for each other. And this is still not enough to move some of our colleagues. And at some point, when you have it on film, when you see people who are U.S. citizens being murdered on live television, and this is happening, it's like, how do they stay silent? And so I want to go over to the path forward now. So there's a big conversation here. And, immediately after Pretti's death, a lot of our colleagues in Congress, Democrats, basically said that they were not going to vote to fund the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, and ICE, unless we made real reforms to end the violence in our streets. And it's in Minneapolis now, but when's it coming to a city near you? I think people are really afraid of that. And some of these reforms included mandatory body cameras for all ICE agents. Take off those masks. What kind of legitimate law enforcement agency allows people to wear masks? Making sure that there's transparency and accountability if charges are brought against ICE officers. And then also, too, just being transparent and making sure that we can trust this agency. And right now, there's no trust. So ahead of the deadline for government to shut down on the 31st, senators did separate the bill, the DHS bill, from the rest of the funding package to get a 2-week continuing resolution. In English, it means we're going to keep government open for another 2 weeks until we get our act together and figure out what to do to hold ICE accountable. This legislation is now in the House, Angie, and government is partially shut down as we speak. And we'll start voting as soon as tonight on the package. Where do you stand on this? And what do you think is the right thing to do, given the fact that you represent Minneapolis area? And how do we keep ICE from going to other cities and abusing people and hold them accountable?
Well, look, if there was ever a state that they made a mistake to target, it was Minnesota.
Yeah.
Seriously. I mean, we stand together in our state, and what you've seen, look, I mean, my neighbors, we've had every right to revolt, to riot. None of that has happened.
Right.
We have taken a phone and the Constitution, and we're marching the streets. And that does remind me, and I get chills. You think about the people in the civil rights movement. Did they know what they were doing in terms of the place that history would put those individuals? And Minnesotans are stepping up and doing this right now. Look, I'm not going to give another penny to DHS. I'm not voting for a 2-week extension. They put $170 billion in the big, beautiful bill.
That was passed back in July.
That's right.
Last year.
To fund ICE.
Yep.
They don't need more money. What they need is to dismantle the entire operation inside of ICE. You cannot police in this way on the streets of America, anywhere in America. So Yes, body cameras would be an improvement.
Mhm.
Take off the masks,
Yeah.
absolutely. Make sure that these agents are adhering to use of force
Yep,
standards
yep.
in our community. That's certainly something. Properly identify them.
Mhm.
Have a warrant. Have a judicial
Yes.
warrant. What is happening in Minnesota?
And you explain what a
Yeah.
judicial warrant is compared to
Well-
what they're presenting to
Well,
people.
they're showing up and saying, we're just going to knock down your door.
Yeah.
What we want is a judge to sign a warrant
Right.
if you want to break down the front door of someone's house.
Right.
That is following the law. What they are doing in Minnesota is they're sitting outside Home Depots,
Mhm.
on the pads of convenience stores.
Yep.
They are sitting outside McDonald's, and they're just waiting on somebody black or brown to walk in.
Mhm.
You know,
And they are asking for their papers. And
Yeah.
this is America, folks. This is
Yeah.
crazy.
no,
Yeah.
and the other thing I add too is, I'm on the House Armed Services Committee, and the conversation about DHS came up, and I said, who are these people? These
Mhm.
randos off the street
Yeah.
who have no training, no background checks. Some have criminal records, actually.
Yeah.
And, you agree with me on this, Angie. Everyone wants secure borders.
That's right.
Everyone
Everybody
wants
does.
people
Everybody.
who are committing crime and violent crime to be deported. That's not the question here. The question is turning an agency on U.S. citizens and people who are just minding their business.
Well, and that's it. And I'll give you a good personal example. My brother-in-law, who lives in my congressional district,
Mhm.
stopped to get a soda at a convenience store.
Wow.
He happens to be Latino.
Mm.
4 armed agents pulled their guns as he was returning to his car a week ago.
Wow.
He showed his real ID to them. They
Mhm.
ran it. But before they let him go, they told him, now we know where you live. You need to be thinking about your friends who are
Wow.
not here legally, and we'll come visit you at home. It's that kind of fear and chaos.
Yeah.
And that's not unique. This is happening everywhere across Minnesota right
Wow.
now.
Wow. Let me ask you this. Speaking of changes that need to happen at DHS, since Holman announced that Bavino and Noem were no longer in charge and that he was taken over,
Mhm.
have things actually changed?
Well, they haven't shot anybody in 8 days, so I guess
Okay.
that's an improvement.
Right.
But that shouldn't be the standard at all.
Right.
The example I just gave you of my brother-in-law, that happened after Holman came to
That happened
town.
after. Wow.
So look, they haven't
Yeah.
changed their tactics at all. We received testimony in Minnesota 2 weeks ago. There is a U.S. citizen section in the detention centers. Why
Mhm.
in the hell do we need a U.S. citizen
Right.
section in our detention centers in Minnesota or anywhere in America? They're pulling people off the side of the road. They're detaining them and they're sending them within 12 hours often to El Paso.
Mhm.
And then they're deporting them out of the country as fast as they can. That is happening every single day. And it's just tragic. I mean, we finally got little Liam back from Texas
Yep.
and back to his teachers and his friends. But think about what we had to go through to get one 5-year-old back
Right.
from Texas. This is insanity. And
Yeah.
I think the rest of America has woken up to that, except maybe the Republicans in this institution right now,
Mhm.
because they're still acting like this is some local Minnesota issue.
Right.
And I've just been so proud to see the number of protests occurring across this country. And we're not just protesting against ICE, we're protesting for our First Amendment rights.
Yeah.
Our Second Amendment rights, our Fourth Amendment rights,
Right.
our
Due
14
process.
Due
Due
process. I
process,
mean,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
don't even get me started on Don Lemon.
I was going to ask you, what are
Getting-
people saying about Don Lemon?
I mean, we've got independent journalists from Minnesota who were arrested with him. But if journalists can't do their job
Right.
documenting what this
Right.
government is doing, we all know that is one more step toward the authoritarian government that this administration seems to be hell-bent on creating.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly
It's the
what
playbook.
Yeah.
what Ayatollah is doing right now. The theocracy in Iran. They basically said no internet because they don't want the news of what they are doing
Right.
in Iran to get out.
That's
And
right.
if we start allowing that to happen in this country, then we really no longer have a First Amendment.
That's right.
But I will add this too. I mean, this conversation is often being framed as Democrats want open borders and Republicans want law and order. There is nothing happening right now that says law and order. So
No.
how, in God's name, do Republicans just sit by, silently and not speak up about this? It's embarrassing.
Well, it's dangerous. It's dangerous to take an oath to the Constitution
Right.
and then serve a president instead.
Yeah.
It's really dangerous that we have a group of colleagues who won't stand up to their own party or their own president. I know, that privately, many of them have
Yeah.
the same concerns,
Sure.
but they are silent. And silence is complicity at this point in this country if you're
Yeah.
not standing up.
Yeah, and here's the deal. I mean, this discussion that we're having is not a judgment about who you voted for in 2024.
That's right.
This is about the Constitution, the oath that
Mhm.
we take, and the gross violation of what we see playing out in real time in Minnesota. And so again, I still say this should not be a partisan issue. It should be an American issue. And again, the fact that our colleagues are failing so miserably is, to you said, it's
Yeah.
dangerous.
And we as Democrats, we have to be willing to say, of course, we want safe and
Yes,
secure borders.
Absolutely.
We support public safety
Yes.
in our communities. Anyone undocumented or otherwise who has committed a violent crime
Yeah.
should not be walking the streets.
We all agree on
no,
that.
That's right.
We all
That's
agree
right.
on
Yeah.
that.
We want to do the clip of the week, Angie, and basically it is Senator Tillis's comments on Noem based on what Trump said to him. So we're going to run that really quick and and we want you to tell us what you think.
Yeah, and tell us who Senator Thom Tillis is.
Senator Thom Tillis is a senator from North Carolina, Republican.
Republican senator. This is
outgoing
important.
Senator, had been loyal Republican
Yep.
and fell out with Trump.
Mhm.
And now he's retiring and he's speaking the truth about things.
Yep.
They're discrediting even these officers. They're going to make their job more difficult and more dangerous with this incompetence that I'm seeing out of Noem and out of Stephen Miller.
The president called you a loser, I believe.
I am thrilled about that. That makes me qualified to be Homeland Security Secretary and Senior Advisor to the President.
I love that.
So Thom Tillis just called Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller losers.
What do y'all think of that? I love that. I
Yep.
mean, it was perfect timing. Senator Tillis knocked it out of the park.
He
What
did.
do y'all think?
I mean, I will say they are losers, but
Yes.
I also think, and let's not be naive here, that Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller are creating exactly the culture that they want
Yes.
Absolutely.
inside today's ICE. So
Yeah.
they are losers. They should both be fired, otherwise impeached, in my view. But at the end of the day, this is the ICE that Donald Trump has asked for. And
Mhm.
we have to be clear-eyed about that and the fight we have ahead of us.
Obviously, what's happening with DHS right now, that's the number one topic. That's what people want to talk with me
Right.
about. I don't know if you saw the editorial board from the Conservative Review and Outlook in the Wall Street Journal.
Mhm.
They actually said that a Trump Senate district in the county that I'm from, that was carried by a Democrat, that the reason why the Democrat won, they cited was because DHS and what
Mhm.
Trump is doing on immigration. So everybody wants to talk about immigration right now,
Right.
no matter what part of the political spectrum you may happen to be from.
That's true.
But is there something else that we're missing that we need to be talking about? I would love to get both of your opinions on that, because I bet you there's something that Trump is doing that's really rotten and dirty that we're missing, that also needs to have our attention.
Well, I'm the head of the Ag Committee, so I got to talk about farmers in this country. Bankruptcies are up over
Mhm.
50% right now in
Right.
our nation. The
goodness.
global trade war that Trump and his buddies are promoting, it's having a devastating effect on farm country. And look, at Democrats, the minority, we introduced legislation to
Yeah.
provide economic assistance to family farmers and to families,
Yeah.
because we understand it's both family farmers and families that are hurting.
No, and the other thing about family farmers and farmers, people often forget these are family-owned businesses.
That's right.
People think about farming as a thing that just creates food, but these are small businesses, often family-owned businesses. So to your point,
Well, and often they're on the ACA plan
Yep.
as well. So
Mhm.
they're getting their health insurance
Yep.
through the Affordable Care Act.
Yep.
And so their healthcare costs are going up, their business is going down. And at the end of the day, this administration just kicked thousands of people off of supplemental nutrition assistance
Yep.
programs. So,
Yeah.
all the pressure coming. Don't let Trump and Republicans tell you that they love family farmers, because they certainly aren't acting like it.
that's so true.
Yeah, they really aren't. And the thing that worries me that
Mhm.
we're not really talking a lot about is voting itself.
That was mine, Mark.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I
That
mean,
was mine.
what Trump's said today,
Mhm.
that states should nationalize this election.
Yep.
And that Republicans should I guess take the
Mhm.
voting away from states and the Republicans can be in charge of voting for all 50 states. That is scary.
Yeah.
That is absolutely scary. And it feeds into this fear that he is not going to let us have legitimate midterms in this country. And that would be something that our republic, had experienced this for the first time, and that would not be good.
I think we got to be ready for it.
Yeah, we have to be ready for it,
I said before that Trump wants to invoke the Insurrection Act.
He does.
Minnesota
Absolutely.
was his testing ground, and I
Absolutely.
think Minnesotans were so united. We didn't give him a
Mhm.
reason to do
Disciplined.
it. Discipline.
Yes.
But that is exactly what he wants, and we're seeing it every single day. Little clues that that's where they're going in the 26 election.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And their policies are such a disaster.
Mm.
They're so terrible at everything, doing nothing to reduce costs. And then here we are now worried about our elections.
Mhm.
And I totally agree with you, Mark. I think that election integrity, they're
Mhm.
trying to undermine. Look what they're doing in Fulton County right now.
Right.
The voter information they asked for in
Mhm.
Minnesota, they asked, the Secretary of State of Washington to provide voter information. So it's already in motion.
Yeah, it's in motion.
And
It's
we
in
have to
motion. Yeah.
lawyer up,
Yeah.
make people aware, and make sure that we have turnout that is in record numbers in 2026.
Yeah. And I want all the activists out there that may be watching to understand that there may be something else that you think that we should be focused on as a Democratic caucus, but it's hard to hit everything.
Right.
And we have to figure out what we're going, the few things that we're going
That's
to
right.
hit and focus on that.
Yeah.
And it's going to be
Yeah.
tough because he's doing a whole lot of damage
Yeah.
up there in a lot of
Absolutely.
different areas. Angie, thank you for joining us.
That was
we really
awesome.
appreciate
Thanks
having
for
you.
having me.
Marilyn, thank you for being here with us.
Well, thank you for having me as your guest host. And to my colleague, Angie, you are just a fantastic member. You represent Minnesota well. We're lucky to have you in our caucus. And again, standing up for Minnesotans, being disciplined, and more importantly, being strategic.
Yeah,
You know, this world isn't perfect, but it can be more perfect if we decide to show up and use our voices.
That's right. Thank you for joining us this week. Please remember to rate and review the show wherever you may get your podcast. Greg will be back next week, and we want him to see all of these amazing ratings and that we did great while he was not here. We'll be back for another episode next week of The Fly-In.